All right, hello everybody. Now that we've been through our mandatory adventure in Dakota forgetting how his software works between live streams, which is a little bit less excusable when I was streaming every week than it is now that I haven't done it for months. I'm gonna be coming at you with a whole bunch of things. Words are hard. Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about Stewart's sentencing hearing, the divorce case finally being resolved. My mother is free. She can call Stewart her ex-husband, and it will be correct. She doesn't have to correct people and say estranged wife or separated wife all the time anymore. And we will also be going over Trump and DeSantis both hinting at pardons for January 6 defendants and grandstanding over that. Might watch, because I still haven't actually seen it, Trump going on stage with the January 6 political prisoner choir for the national anthem in some kind of fascistic display that I just refuse to look at until now. We might get to that. We've got a local deranged right-wing media rag going in the background there that we will eventually get to. This is an outlet that was shush dog, so firmly attached to Stewart Rhodes that they continued to interview him in prison through much of the trial, and had his their business address for Northwest Liberty News listed as the address for all legal paperwork during the divorce case. So I can talk about that now that the divorce case is unsealed. And then as we go, we will get just a little bit into, oh yes, there's a lot of things. And it seems that Jim White of Northwest Liberty News, who I believe moved to Kalispell because of Stewart in the first place, and personally has disappointed me, because he was the person who introduced me to Skinny Puppy when I was a teenager, and has fallen pretty far. One of those people utterly unable to recognize authoritarianism if it is not branded with a hammer and sickle. We will also be going over Franklin Shute / Elias Alias's book, How Do Cameras Work? There we go. On Oathkeepers and his time as an Oathkeepers board member and with the militia movement. This back jacket, we have to, at the very least have to get to the back jacket. I do like this guy. I see him around town. We are in a group for local authors where I'm workshopping my doorstopper fantasy novel that nobody's ever going to read, which is also something that I dropped off over the winter to focus on not failing school and keeping my job, because I couldn't manage anything else. We got to get to the back jacket at the very least. Almost, I would say 60% of the back jacket is, yes, I posted on Twitter, 60% of the back jacket of this book is one sentence. We will get to that, and then over to one side, I also have a pile of random goodies. This week, I attempted to clear a space in the family storage unit that was previously Stewart's storage unit, where he was supposed to come get all of his shit that we took out of our house and moved over there, and never did, and effectively abandoned it all. So trying to clear space to stow a normal thing in there, like my snow tires over the summer, I knocked over a box and a random heap of Oathkeeper shit came tumbling out. So I have, I don't know, I feel like doing a prank call is a little bit amateur, but I might be calling these phone numbers for Ammon and Ryan Bundy that are on this random scrap of yellow legal pad and see if they're current. Most likely not. And then, yeah, if he wasn't if he didn't bother to come get all of his shit while he still lived in Montana and had other places to move it, I don't think if he lives, which I don't think with his lifestyle and fatty prison food that he's going to live until the end of his sentence, if he's not pardoned, I don't think he's going to be coming and wandering over as a 76-year-old ex-con to come get his piles of shirts and copies of Fiat Empire back. He might whine in interviews about how we probably threw out all his stuff after holding it and paying for the storage unit for years just to do our due diligence in him getting all of his crap back. Okay, but no, I'm having a very bad executive function week. So we're going to take things from the top. I should have written out a schedule for myself. Gonna start with divorce and then sentencing. Yeah, Monday rolled into Libby Town early in the morning. And I believe I will not that tab. I believe I will pull it up here. Buried somewhere back in my tweets. Oh yes. Just let's see if I can take this shortcut. No, that just opens up the media assets. Oh no, that. Nope. Nope, I have to scroll for it manually. Trying to pull that up turned into kind of a small scale disaster. Jeez. Hello, 5 people. Welcome to the stream. 5 entire people. I usually average 1 to 2. But that's also because I'm not very good at this. Go back through my replies to find it. I will say that in the last little while, Twitter's functionality as a website, like the browser version of Twitter, has started to suck to the point of near unusability. You cannot tweet anything with a media asset in it, with a link that brings up a preview, with a picture, with a video, and I can't quote tweet or retweet anything that has a media asset in it because the scroll bar will not work. I can't resize the window. And the scroll bar is locked above the point where I can hit post. So hey, good to see you. Yeah, like the functionality of Twitter, and it's part of like eventually something that I need to give my completely uneducated, unqualified 2 cents on, is that I think greedy platform owners and just the degrading quality of services in online spaces is going to save us from the cyberpunk dystopia. Because, there we go, I finally found it. Like, the website is just moving at a crawl. So, for anybody who didn't see it, which is probably no one, because you all came here from Twitter and other social media where I posted this, this is how we announced that the divorce was a thing. And I was much more dressed up for that than I am now. I basically just wandered in from work and changed out of drywall. So I just wanted to compare and contrast, put together Dakota with this frazzled mess that you see before you. But yeah, I think in the long run, if the cyberpunk dystopia were, I did it again, were very convenient, if the smart home stuff all worked as advertised, if everything was smooth and good, then I think a lot of people would have just unthinkingly signed on with that. As it is now, the owners of all these platforms cannot help but make them unpleasant, unwieldy, and difficult to use to maximize short-term gain in the attention economy and for ad revenue, which kind of, if you believe in a shadowy conspiracy behind everything, that kind of undermines it, because they would want to make the services sort of work in order to keep people using them to spy on, manipulate, and manage everyone. As it is now, all these big platforms are becoming such garbage that people are kind of gradually being forced off. Like, I think everybody's going to be forced into Web 3.0. Not Web 3. Fuck those people. It's not the blockchain. I'm talking about the other Web 3, which is the open source everything. Like, Stallman will eventually win because the online platform giants will compulsively make everything worse for short-term profits, because that's how corporations work. And it'll save us from corporate technocracy, because everything's going to suck so much to use. We're all going to be forced into going with punk alternatives to all the mainstream shit, just so that it works and isn't annoying and irritating to have on your phone. Like, I'm about to go back to using Linux. I switched back to Windows out of convenience. Yeah, because as it is now, like, we're seeing how effective all these platforms were at disseminating propaganda and rigging elections through, like, Cambridge Analytica and the Mercer family with their fingerprints on everything. But Cambridge Analytica needs functioning social media to work with. If some kind of bizarre metaverse growth consumes Facebook, and then Twitter doesn't work half the time when you need it to, they don't have any material to use. All the people allowing, like, the structures that allow Cambridge Analytica and Russian intelligence to misuse social media for propaganda purposes inherently erode themselves. Yeah, and force exactly the Mercers, and end up forcing their own user base out. It's just a grand scale self-sabotage. It's the same, like, corrosive short-term profit incentive that you see destroying a lot of things when monopolistic capitalism, like, starts to eat itself. But no, yes. But the thing is, Elon bought Twitter to empower dictators and not-for-profit, but Elon is the product of a system of crony capitalism and nepotism in favor to people that were born wealthy. Well, I mean, do we have enough time? Like, it's basically staying under 2 degrees Celsius of climate of global warming. Basically, that's gone. Yep. Sorry, I am terribly prone to getting off on weird tangents when I'm tired. But yeah, like, the thesis statement for that is, all of these online platforms are destroying themselves because they're being run by people who came up in an environment that coddled them, and now short-term profit incentive is destroying them, but we also can't wait around for all the systems to wreck themselves and force everybody into using better alternatives and stymie the propaganda that way, because at that point the ocean will be coming to visit us wherever we happen to live. At the more immediate front, where I have some level of personal control and not just looming existential dread, yeah, divorce. So that means that... Shush, dog. Up until Monday, if Stewart had gotten lonely and depressed in prison... Yeah, the dog is just gonna dog. He could have demanded visitation phone calls at any time, and the 3 minor siblings that I have still would have had to deal with that. Like, he hasn't been in regular contact with any of them since, I think, early in 2021. But just completely off, doing his own thing, especially after being arrested. But if he'd become sufficiently sad and mopey, it's a very, very large dog, around 145 to 150 pound Great Dane mix. I've had her on camera a couple times when she's wandered over. Right now she's going to perch on my bed and bark out the window. But he could have demanded visitation phone calls at any time. He could have exerted his joint custody authority over medical decisions, whether the minor children are in public school. So, yeah, asserted authority over medical decisions, education, extracurriculars, and possibly, depending on the wording, like, even though he's in prison, if the situation had remained in limbo from prison, he could have simply refused to sign off on my mother moving out of the area if she wanted to move out of Lincoln County, because working with an interim temporary parenting plan and child support agreement, both parents have to sign off on the primary residence for the children being moved. So if we'd remained in limbo for longer, he could have continued to assert control, even to the point of just refusing to answer the mail, like he has been. Yeah, he gets to now just theatrically prey on his cot and focus on being the American Solzhenitsyn, which that's probably a horrible mispronunciation. Which brings us to... Oh yeah, the dog. I genuinely don't know whether Mocha or Stewart are more egocentric. Mocha knows that she is the center of gravity for my life, and Stewart only thinks that he is. So that brings us nicely in. So that was exhausting and stressful, but a good day, which is the same theme as the sentencing, which I still have not looked at the entire live coverage of the sentencing. I got a couple of updates from my mom over text in the family group chat while I was at work, but I was at work going on scaffolds and texturing sheets of drywall and doing manual labor stuff the whole day while the sentencing hearing was ongoing, and was mostly out of touch except for occasional family group text dings. That said, the level of grandstanding was completely unsurprising to me. I expected nothing less than bizarre rambling and deflection, like final attempts to throw poor Kelly Sorrell under the bus after all of the nonsense that she dealt with from him. Like, not to hold Kelly Sorrell blameless for her involvement in an attempt to overthrow the government, but I've also been told that, like, if I talked to her then I would feel much more pity and much less anger for her role in the January 6th insurrection. Hello, 8 people. How y'all doing? Like, if you were all physically in my apartment, you would not fit. It would be standing room only in here. But yeah. Hi. Good to see you, mighty librarian. First time chat, hello. Oh, 10 people. I don't know if the prison that he's going to be going to does work release or prison labor. He's probably not going to end up in one of the horrible programs that feeds the logistics for Chick-fil-A. Oh, thank you. Thank you for calling in the troops. Most likely, he's just going to continue existing on a cot, the way that he existed in the upstairs bedroom of the cabin. Yep. Oh, I love that it showed up in the chat like accusatory that I added rape to permitted terms in the chat. Like it's like Twitch is wagging its finger at me. Really, I'm not gonna joke around about that because I cannot advocate super strongly for prison reform. And really, hello, thank you for the follow, Laura S. Ducks, if I'm getting that right. And really, I've got a lot of work by people writing in favor of prison abolition, just outright. That's on my reading backlog for nonfiction. And thank you for the follow, mighty librarian. Laura's Ducks. Okay, no apostrophes in there. Hello. So I cannot be all about that from a humanitarian perspective if I'm going to also cheer for Stewart being raped in prison as a possibility, which probably won't, because if he's popular as a paramilitary asshole on the outside, he'll probably have friends on the inside. As it is, he's only going to medium security. Yeah, thank you too. So that's not even really in the cards, probably being a victim of sexual violence in prison. And I also can't cheer for it because I don't think that should be just an implicit punishment in the system. Like, I don't think there should be a subtext. For one thing, like death penalty advocates who don't want prisoners to have painless executions, because that kind of logic that we should be accepting unofficially the infliction of cruelty and suffering on inmates to kind of karmically balance the scales for suffering inflicted, that undermines everything implied by calling something a correctional or reformatory facility. And I just don't believe in prison as punishment, as a model. Like, Stewart should absolutely remain in lockup for the rest of his life. I was hoping for better than 20 years because he's a threat. He's a clear and present threat to the country. Yes. Yes, and you wish that they'd take his ability to call out to Freedom Corner types away. I'm torn on that because there is definitely a risk that he's going to continue to reach out to a radicalized base from the inside and keep up his noise about being a political prisoner and keep feeding the media ecosystem of the massive right-wing victim industrial complex. At the same time, creating like a provision to cut off prisoners from being able to access the media or dictate what media they can access because they're a terrorism or radicalization threat or are involved in seditious activity against the government is some Patriot Act shit, and I can't really advocate for opening that door either. Like, I am extremely unhappy with Stewart continuing to be able to call in to shit like the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Yeah, and as far as the January 6th wing of the DC jail, I think that was a tragic mistake. I think some people did not learn anything from the detention camps that incubated the original ISIS leadership. They should not have done that shit. Like, none of those guys should have been even neighbors in different cells. Like, split them up into as many different county jails as you can and just pay for the extra security. Like, if you're worried about breakouts, just station some of those National Guard troops as extra security and distribute the motherfuckers across like a dozen county jails to keep from creating like a radicalization cyst growing inside Washington, D.C. Because the January 6th wing was a terrible idea, the only good idea involved in any of that. Bless you, dog. Yeah. That's why we've been on a roll since our overthrow of Guatemala in the 50s of just continuous winning and learning from all of our mistakes. Is absolutely what happened. I mean, the QAnon shaman was always going to never learn. That was a given. But granting extra privileges, I'll go ahead and verify before I complain about it. I'll double check and verify that they can make unmonitored phone calls, which I would be shocked if they were actually unmonitored phone calls. If I were trying to collect a bunch of evidence telling the January 6th rioters that they could make unmonitored phone calls and then not committing that to any paper where I would be legally liable for it and then monitoring the fuck out of the phone calls, yes, they would absolutely fall for it. They're dumb enough to fall for that. The manager of the jail created joinder with them. Yeah, they definitely. I mean, they live streamed, and that is a little bit deceptive. But like, if you just say that, I'm just saying. It is a little deceptive for me to advocate for it, even though I was just saying if I were them, this is what I would do. Like, assuming that I'm somebody working inside that system. Like, I don't think it should be okay for cops to lie to people. Peter Schwartz. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with who Peter Schwartz is. I don't think cops should be able to just blatantly lie in interrogation. Like, or at least there should be some boundaries for that to prevent malpractice or abuse of power. But at the same time, like, I would bet money that that's what they did, is just say in some unofficial capacity that we're not monitoring your calls because you're all special boys and girls and real Americans, and then monitoring the fuck out of them. I would bet on that being what happened. Oh, second longest January 6th sentence. I'm sure he's very upset about losing the pride of place there. Yeah, it's really weird that they're all allowed to, and mostly they're calling out to crazy media outlets that record and broadcast what they're saying anyway. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Very violent on January 6th and had a long criminal history. Thank you for the remember those day. Remember this day forever. Yeah, thank you for the context there. One thing I definitely need to read more about are all the other January 6th insurrectionists, because I've had kind of Oathkeepers and Proud Boys related tunnel vision. I definitely need to get in touch with that guy who called in his father after he threatened to murder his family if they turned him in. I need to get in touch. I need to contact him, if to express sympathy and solidarity, if nothing else. Rafiti's son, yes. But yeah, just to go way back, as much as I think we need to completely reformat the prison system in the United States, Freedom Corner. His mother is one of the Freedom Corner leaders. It is a really awkward position that the mother and I am not familiar with Freedom Corner. Actually, when I first heard about Freedom Corner, I thought it was a derogatory slang term for Oathkeeper. Yeah, you were exactly right. Oathkeepers were a disposable asset on the ground, which I'm gonna get into. I talk about how I think Stewart's strategizing and betting everything on a future pardon is going to go. The long story short is I don't think it's going to work out well for him, but it's too late for him to make any other decision. I was, especially with looking at how critical Judge Mehta was about Stewart's conduct and all the ridiculous grandstanding he did, attempting again to throw Kelly Sorrell under the bus. One last tangent about previous trial coverage. I still see people joking about Stewart sleeping with his attorney, especially having been reliably told that if I spoke to Kelly Sorrell, I would realize that she is mentally not all there. Like, that shifted my perspective even further. But Stewart doing the kind of shit that I have to spend valuable time talking about in therapy, and getting on the stand during his trial and talking about his quote-unquote BDSM relationship with his attorney in a way that was obviously meant to belittle and shame her, got a lot of people on Twitter who should have known better to laugh with Stewart and not at him, mocking this woman that he's attempting to slut shame on the stand in the same way that he is, in an attempt to big himself up as an alpha male, thinking that would make the jury like him more, and then also to get back at Kelly Sorrell, probably for the "I think Stewart just wanted somewhere to sleep" comment while talking about and denying that they had a relationship. Just petty revenge. And so I want to make it clear that really, if anybody is covering Stewart's relationship with his attorney, it's got to be looked at as really presumptive that was an abusive relationship, because Stewart, in any kind of relationship where there is any sort of power imbalance or where there's a potential for any kind of weakness that Stewart can exploit, and if she was not all there mentally, which, just from my interactions with her on Twitter, I'm seeing a lot of attention seeking, and thank you, and a lot of attention seeking and not a lot of long-term thought, and just a lot of impulsivity. If there's any kind of purchase, any relationship that Stewart has, it has to be presumed that it was an abusive relationship. And if anybody is going to be slut-shamed while talking about Stewart Rhodes, the only person who is slut-shamed should be Stewart Rhodes. I'm all in favor of that. Yeah, hey. Oh, it's Tony Michaels. Hello. I just touch people. Yeah, I have returned from the internet dead. Hello and welcome. I could Yeah, to catch you up, over the winter, I could barely hold it together to keep going to my job and maintain a non-failing grades in my college classes, and just did not have the extra mental bandwidth to do anything else. Been working on building my capacity. I have a prescription. I have an ADHD prescription now. I'm in therapy, so you guys aren't getting rid of me for a good long while, I think. Now that I'm over the hump there. Yeah, thank you. And good to see you too. So I was just wrapping up my PSA about covering Stewart Rhodes and Kelly Sorrell. That in any interpersonal relationship where we're joking about like Stewart's like weird sex pest history, if anybody is slut shamed, we have to make sure that we are only slut shaming Stewart Rhodes. And I'm saying hello to, there's a dog. Let's just pan down a little bit. Oh, nope, dog got bored of me and left. But yeah, going on from that, so we had a highlight reel of Stewart making one final attempt at throwing Kelly Sorrell under the bus, and saying that as a Yale trained lawyer, as a practicing lawyer who'd done real cases, as evidenced by somebody from one of the real cases that he abandoned and left high and dry, sending in a letter as a character witness, which surprised the heck out of me, that he would just go ahead and listen to Kelly Sorrell when she told him to delete stuff off of his phone when he knew that would be destruction of evidence. That doesn't fly. Calling it not passing the laugh test was entirely appropriate choice of words in that case. That's not even slightly credible. And then going on to calling himself the American Solzhenitsyn, which is, I believe, a title that he's been rehearsing in his head for well over 10 years. Stewart was obsessed with the Gulag Archipelago. Oh, hello, and we've got Ben, I'm sorry, Mycelis. If I mispronounced your name, I apologize. I've got that homeschool education kind of thing going where I can, with the Midas Touch Network, hello, I've got that, oh, I didn't see that was the same chatter. That was embarrassing. Yeah, I didn't look at the username. Whoops. Yeah, I am tired today. My since over the last couple of days, my sleep schedule has been completely trashed, or I would have started this live stream even a little bit together. Basically, stepped in from work and fumbled with getting everything online, and I'm a little bit of a zombie and wish that I'd brought more coffee. I'm happy about 18 years. I was polling for better than 20. I was really excited to hear potentially 27. I was really gunning for 27. But, I don't think he's going to live until 76. I'm not sure if I have the authorization to talk about the prediction for the timeline that my mom got from her Ouija board. On Halloween a couple of years ago. No, on the winter solstice a couple of years ago. But it did accurately predict the date of how old Stewart would be when he was arrested. So I'm pulling for the accuracy of that planchette reading. But yeah, I'm okay with 18 years. It doesn't seem overly harsh. They're going to be appealing the sentence. I'm okay with it. I was wishing for more. But yeah, so I know whenever coyotes are up to antics anywhere in the woods surrounding this subdivision, because she'll wake up and just start barking at 1,000,000 decibels directly next to my head in the middle of the night. So I know all the times in the AM when coyotes and wolves and local bears prowl close to the urban interface. But yeah, then there was that, and then I believe the grandstanding about being the American Solzhenitsyn and cultivating that title for himself has been brewing for probably a decade. I did not see it coming that he would compare himself to the protagonist of Kafka's The Trial, which is hilarious because he knows exactly what he's being charged for. He knows exactly why he's there. He knows how the entire process works, and he knows he's guilty. They received all due process, and man, I can't be against the death penalty and then say that he probably deserves to be just shot in a back alley like a dog, ultimately. But I mean, on a karmic level, he does. Oh yeah, now we're getting into the interesting part. Thank you for continuing to move me along while I stall out on tangents. But yeah, I don't. If there is a Kafka character that Stewart should compare himself to, I would say a much less sympathetic version of Gregor Samsa, in which he has been a cockroach the entire time, unable to provide for his family, and with decaying food stuck in his crevices. And it just took everybody a really long time to notice. So kind of an inversion of Metamorphosis, where everyone's been treating him like a golden god while he was in reality an insect. Well, I mean, I am kind of talking on my feelings on that, where I do feel that, really honestly, the most convenient thing for me would be if Stewart died, so I would just never have to worry about him again. I would just feel a sense of relief at the finality of the solution. Wow, what a terrible choice of words there. I did that to myself. I've got no excuse. I got no excuse whatsoever for that word choice. Oh, wow, we're just Michael Scotting out here. No, I would just feel just a sense of relief if he suddenly died or somebody killed him, as long as it wasn't spun into him being a martyr for the movement in a way that created further damage. But also just, yeah, no, Freud is not my friend. But also just like emotionally, I can't get super hot under the collar and say that the state should kill him, because I very emotionally also do not believe in the death penalty. Yeah. I'm sorry that you can sympathize and understand where I'm coming from. I wish nobody else could understand where I'm coming from with that. But yeah, so on to the pardons. So all of this, and then like throwing out ridiculous dog whistles that, as somebody with an education in history, even the cursory lack of reading comprehension kind that people like Stuart and Alex Jones have. Like saying ridiculous shit like the KKK was a Democrat organization, as if Stewart has no idea what the Southern strategy is, or who Barry Goldwater was. Any of that, or the basic ability to look at a heat map of partisan voting patterns since desegregation, and figure out that things might have changed. All of that was grandstanding and interviewing effectively, like his cover letter, his resume building for a future pardon, just like the entire trial has been. Since he's been arrested, he's been building his resume for being pardoned to serve as a right-wing demagogue or enforcer for whoever pardons him. Here's the problem with that. Even though Trump has been performing live with the January 6th political prisoner choir, and Ron DeSantis very specifically threw out the reference to day one considering pardons for people who were politically persecuted that were January 6 defendants if he was elected, and made that announcement on the day that Stewart was sentenced, in which he referred to himself as a political prisoner in his sentencing. I'm sure that was just a coincidence. These are useful things to say for right-wing political capital in the short term, even though to a degree blaming everything on Antifa is still kind of undercutting the political prisoners and justified riots. Yeah, they have no idea what persecution is. All these people, they absolutely do not. You're right. And all these people thinking that the FBI is a leftist enforcement organization just reveal that they've never heard of COINTELPRO. Or if they have, that they have absolutely no idea what it was or the broader context. The FBI killed MLK. They are not a left-wing organization. I fully support, that said, like the FBI agents we've talked to have been great. I feel like they're a different organization from what they were when they assassinated MLK. But still, that is not an anti-fascist Iron Front, like, American leftist org the way crazy people say that it is. I wish the FBI were all secret anarcho-socialists. Like, I would love to live in the reality that all these people project. Yes, and that is exactly correct. He's not talking to smart people. He's saying the correct things to play into the narrative that is constructed by and for people like Trump, where Trump believes in the narrative and is vulnerable to the flattery, whereas DeSantis is smarter and is pursuing it as a matter of cold calculation without buying into the narrative. Now, there is an element here where I believe that a lot of these people, like, DeSantis is not coming across as completely genuine in a lot of his shit the same way that Trump does, which is why he's going to get... No, I don't want to offend the devil by saying that DeSantis is the devil. We'll cool ourselves on that a little bit. I know a lot of great Satanists who will take offense to that. There is a degree, I think, to which people who are true believers are more successful with reaching this super right-wing, detached from reality base, because there is a genuine element that comes across. Like, Alex Jones is massively successful as a propagandist, in part because when he gets drunk as fuck on the Joe Rogan podcast and starts going off on 12th dimensional energy vampires influencing the New World Order, he's speaking from the heart. Like, that part where he's like half a handle of Jack Daniels in, yeah, he's trying to straddle a fence that cannot be straddled. He's genuine to a degree, and I'll get to that in a... DeSantis is genuine to a degree, I'll get to that in a moment. But, like, Alex Jones got a ton of new listeners for InfoWars at the precise moment when he got, like, a full handle of Jim Beam in. Yeah, it's perfectly acceptable to hate DeSantis if you live in Florida. We just gotta be Yeah. That would be a very good question to stick to Trump. Will you specifically pardon Stewart Rhodes? That would be a very good interest. But the thing is, Trump isn't going to talk to any journalists that will try to pin him down on a thing. He's going to go to misguided, politically motivated softball town halls in front of favorable audiences put on by suicidal CNN, where he's just going to get softballed endlessly and still flub. All right, you go make yourself dinner. Good to hear from you, everybody. If you are not already following OSINT Yeti, go check out OSINT Yeti, Open Source Intelligence Yeti, on Twitter. Yes, White Copy Paper does have more personality than DeSantis. He seems like a cardboard cutout of a murderer news anchor that just came to life and walked on stage at the RNC. But the issue is, these successful propagandists, they come across as genuine because they actually have insane beliefs, and the people that play into it, I believe, they have to develop a part of themselves that is mentally compartmentalized, the way that Special Forces soldiers living with Northern Alliance dudes in Afghanistan had to compartmentalize a separate old school tribal set of values for living day to day that was separated from their Western world, modern American metropolitan cultural background and worldview. But developing a compartment, a segmented part of your mind that buys into crazy shit so that you can come across as genuine when you're engaging in the base, it can't not affect your behavior the rest of the time. It can't not tell on you the rest of the time, which is kind of where I see a lot of the people involved with the Stop the Steal lawsuits having to create a part of your brain that is just segmented off to interface with true believers while you are grifting, ultimately influences your decision making all the way around. It can't not. And the reason why DeSantis has emerged as the clear frontrunner, cracking my neck, did a lot of stuff overhead, craning my neck upwards at work today. I'm very stiff. Sorry. I felt that one. Has become the clear frontrunner behind Trump is, even though he doesn't have Trump's personality or charisma, and would get absolutely mauled in a debate even if Trump is calling in from a jail cell, which he might well be, it's because DeSantis has a genuine streak of cruelty that appeals deeply to conservatives when it genuinely comes across. Like the kind of psychology that we cultivate as a country by allowing war crimes to go unchecked. Because the person that DeSantis became was created in Guantanamo Bay when he would watch detainees being tortured like it was a spectator sport. The war on terror created DeSantis. You can't have a war crimes and crimes against humanity division of your government in which somebody who gleefully engages in that kind of shit without burning out from psychological harm. You can't have a part of the government where being a sadistic sociopath who is just completely fine with watching detainees being tortured. Yes, it was a Bosnian Muslim man who was ultimately released without charges because they had no actual evidence, one of many if you look at the sordid history of Guantanamo Bay detainees, recognized Ron DeSantis on television. Ron DeSantis was stationed there as a JAG lawyer in the Navy, and he was supposed to be in an oversight position over the enhanced interrogation program to make sure that it didn't get out of hand. And what he would actually do was pull up a chair and watch, for example, a feeding tube being inserted and just left on until the prisoner strapped into a chair was just continuously vomiting while his digestive tract was overflowing with Ensure for like an hour straight. Shit like that is technically not included in any official treaty or recognized international law on torture, but is very clearly torture if you were to see a live leak video of it. And the prisoner didn't know DeSantis was on site. I'm not sure what you mean by that. From what I saw of the interview, he recognized DeSantis as a spectator. He saw him on television in American politics, and he was like, that's that guy that was spectating while I was being tortured in Guantanamo Bay. And so by having a division of the government where doing that as a job gets you good boy points, we create people like Ron DeSantis. And because we have a strong undercurrent in American conservatism where cruelty is a virtue, that part of DeSantis, cruelty, pettiness, and spite, that comes across as genuine. And we have this impression that we should just be basically forcing gay people, Muslims, ultimately anyone non-white, as the concentric rings get tighter and the accepted model minorities get excluded more and more. The way it always works. There was originally a pro-Hitler German nationalist Jewish organization in Weimar, Germany. They're just like banked on being ultra-patriotic and supporting Hitler to restore Germany and make Germany great again and prove that they were the good Jews. They ended up in the camps. Didn't do any good. Like, Ben Shapiro could stand to look that up. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. We have just a undercurrent in this country where there are acceptable targets. Vanky the Jewels too. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Vanky the Jewess. I don't know who that is. Sorry. I might be betraying my ignorance there. Oh, Ivanka Trump. Yeah, and like, about to say something that could get me in a lot of trouble. Authoritarians that want to enforce racial apartheid and engage in ethnic cleansing have more in common with each other than they do not. I think there are some hardcore Zionists in the Israeli government that would be perfectly willing to continue doing business with the United States if the United States government started actively persecuting Jewish Americans. I mean, they're perfectly fine with shaking hands with Saudi Arabia. Like, as long as the cover of being pro-Israel was maintained to appeal to apocalyptic evangelicals who need Israel to exist so the world can end and fulfill biblical prophecy, and as long as there is a facade of being pro-Israel to maintain a facade of Judeo-Christian values and solidarity. I think there are a lot of people in Netanyahu circles, I butchered that pronunciation, I'm sorry, who would be completely fine with overlooking persecution of American Jews by a fascist American government as long as they were still cool with that fascist government and it was at all deniable. Because a lot of the anti-Israel and anti-Zionist diaspora communities in the United States, like the Hasidic Jews, the very fundamentalist ones, who believe that Israel should not be created as a state until the Messiah returns, or the Messiah arrives for the first time. I mean, that's not really a consideration for those people. There's a lot of I think Trump was just in it for money and power. If Trump had people in his cabinet telling him that the Jews thought he was the Messiah, he was going to be pro-Jewish with one hand and then holding hands with actual Nazis with the other. Yeah, demanding worship and gratitude from American Jews because that's what he gets from Jared Kushner. Just because he's been used to Jared Kushner desperately wanting to fuck him for the entire time Kushner's been married to his daughter. That's his attitude towards all Jewish people now, which is kind of an extension of his attitude towards all people, is that he should be a god king and everyone should worship at his feet by default. And unfortunately, the current state of the GOP and American conservatism, which makes it really vulnerable to authoritarian thinking, is such that he's surrounded by people like Ted Cruz who completely validate that by licking his boots clean for the privilege of Trump insulting his wife. I'm getting very far off topic. But yeah, we have that undercurrent of cruelty as a virtue in American politics when the target is acceptable. And the largest acceptable target, the most convenient one right now, is the LGBTQ community. But the largest acceptable target by far is this intentionally maintained underclass of undocumented migrants in the United States. And I'm going to start saying, I've previously said illegal immigrants because it's technically accurate, and I thought like it was a weird euphemism to say undocumented immigrant. When illegal immigration is against the law, it's illegal. I'm going to change that. I'm going to start saying undocumented immigrant and undocumented migrant, because while technically they're here illegally, they're being very intentionally allowed here as part of a de facto system of mistreated and exploited labor that is outside the protection of the law, that is maintained by government policy. If the United States government really wanted to, illegal immigration could be stopped. But we don't do that because it is very convenient from a bunch of different angles to have a large exploitable labor pool that is almost entirely outside the protection of the law, that can be threatened with deportation, that is not covered under labor law, workers' rights, or even court of public opinion. Yes, and that is exactly what has happened. Alabama did this years ago, where they attempted to cut off all illegal Mexican labor, all undocumented migrant work, and they had crops rotting in the fields and had to do an emergency reversal. Previous immigrant crackdowns have had it in the paperwork that people exempted from having their papers checked are people working in housekeeping, hospitality, and farm work. This is an old lesson, and it's just been accepted as part of the system that, like, If every illegal immigrant, I'm doing it again, force of habit, every undocumented migrant in the United States were teleported south of the border and we had the wall just instantly reset to zero, we would need to conduct an emergency airlift import of Mexican migrant workers within the month because our economy would collapse and nothing would function. What we have is an exploited labor pool outside the protection of the law that we are completely dependent on and simultaneously perpetually at war with, just enough to terrorize them, but not enough to get rid of them, like American helots in like the ancient Spartan underclass. And it also serves as a very convenient boogeyman for right-wing populists to reach people that Democrats would otherwise be able to reach on like a protectionist and labor protectionist platform, when in reality the system as it is working perfectly to drive down wages, Yeah, you give Disney that money. I can't. It feels so weird to root for a corporation like Disney that has so many problems. But, like, somebody with lawyer money has to fuck with fascists at some point. Like, we'll take the wins wherever we can get them. You have a good time, Tony. You take in that woke Little Mermaid. Is God forbid we have people with melanin that are allowed to act in movies. You might start to think that people with dark skin live in the world if you absorb a bunch of media that has people with dark skin being present at all. But yeah, and in leveraging cruelty against minorities like queer people and that is why I'm going to start saying undocumented migrants, is because they might be illegal, but they're not unwanted. Not behind the gates in the community unless they come in work vans to clean your house. There are undocumented migrant Mexican drywall crews working in the Flathead Valley right now. Those motherfuckers did not swim across the Rio Grande and hitchhike all the way up here with a drywall lift to hang sheetrock in Kalispell, Montana. It did not happen. There is a sophisticated trafficking system. That's why we make them wear fluoro. Oh, fluorescent orange, yeah. So that ICE knows not to bust those ones. Yeah, the ready-made political terror squad that we've been cultivating to drag families away into unmarked vans in the middle of the night the second they have a dictator to answer to, that we've just been allowing to incubate in our country for decades. Yep. ICE is another one just like Guantanamo Bay where the people were creating inside that institution. It's going to get real fucked up. That's why ICE was on tap as Trump's choice for an internal shock battalion to bust up Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. Hundreds of miles away from any port of entry, just grabbing people into the back of unmarked Hertz rental vans. That's the utility of it. There has to be somebody who realized that we were cultivating a black bag squad inside federal law enforcement, this perfectly conditioned to abduct people in front of their families for speaking out, and they're just still okay with that existing. So just gonna start be like that one guy on my Twitters and every communication with furthermore ICE must be destroyed. Like fucking Cato the Elder. But yeah, that appeal to cruelty an appeal to pettiness, an appeal to spite that DeSantis is able to leverage is where he gets across and has appeal with conservatives. And that is why he's the front runner. Greg Abbott's spikes in popularity come from similar displays of pointless cruelty against acceptable targets. We absolutely brought the war on terror home instead of bringing democracy to Iraq, which is actually, in the continuing irony of Oathkeepers, is something that Oathkeepers and Stewart Rhodes talked about for years and then were dead silent on when it really started to happen in the public eye. Stewart was all about how the machinery of the global war on terror would ultimately be swung inward on domestic dissidents and brought home. And then when it was happening in 2020, they were effectively signing on as enforcers for the government to do shit that the government couldn't get caught doing. But to get back onto stuff that I'm actually qualified to talk about instead of just running my mouth. Yeah, because ultimately, and it's the mindset that you see when you can tell that somebody isn't actually left-leaning when they believe in appeal to hierarchy. All of the Bitcoin bros and the stock bros... thank you. I'm glad you appreciate the tangent. All of the GameStop bros and the Wall Street Bets guys, ultimately the conversation turned from we're going to overturn the financial system and make it fair to we're going to be the ones gloating about being at the top of the hierarchy once this investment pays off. We're going to be the next people at the top of the pyramid. Instead of wanting there to not be an unfair hierarchy, they simply want to surmount it. And Stewart has always been an authoritarian personality who would prefer being at the top of a hierarchy and in charge to destroying an unfair hierarchy and having a more fair world. And that kind of thinking is how you can tell when somebody is going to go on that on their in like leftist circles. That's how you can tell when somebody is ultimately going to go on their walk away arc and leave, is when they engage in that kind of shit. Like really everybody should have seen Sailor Socialists defecting and leaving to go hang out with InfoWars. All the way back with the Red Scare podcast being critical of feminism, doing shit like that criticizes the criticism of hierarchy and structures of power like patriarchy and white supremacy, is a red flag for ultimately deciding that you just want to be on the inside of the circle. Like, you're going to be able to tell who's going to flip based on whether they fall back by default on hierarchical thinking and just want to be on top of things for a change, instead of wanting to fix the problem. Now, inside of that, what Stewart is trying to do is appeal to DeSantis and Trump, demonstrating his undying loyalty, even though he was burned as an expendable asset when he failed to deliver on January 6th, and the election was not stopped. The certification was not stopped. He did not create sufficient chaos. He did not secure hostages or secure the electoral ballots, like I believe he was supposed to. But he has not flipped on his superiors. He has not flipped on Roger Stone or Steve Bannon or Flynn or ultimately Trump himself. And as far back as the operational plan for going into D.C. that ended up in evidence, they were like paying tribute to Ron DeSantis. Like, DeSantis, we love you, at the sign-off of the minutes from their planning session in that one document. And so this entire time, he's been resume building for being brought back as a right-wing demagogue and street enforcer to break up protests and terrorize enemies and provide armed security for a future right-wing strongman president. Saying that that if he were out of prison, he would be organizing armed security for Supreme Court justices when the protests started happening at their fucking house like they should. That kind of shit, that was all signaling to that end. Problem. Stewart is no longer that useful. He's useful where he is right now. But Stewart was useful when he had a roving private army numbering in the thousands of police and military veterans and assorted hangers-on who would be more easily incited to stupid violence than professionals and thus have their own utility. He's useful as somebody with military credentials who also had legal training, who would be more able to operate in gray zones of legality and walk very fine lines while executing a mission for his superiors. Those things made him useful. Right now, Stewart has put himself in kind of an untenable bitch position where it is far too late to flip and turn state's evidence. Like, that's gone. That train has sailed. So he's bet everything on holding out for that future pardon. But by the time the future pardon comes, even if it were theoretically coming next year, which I think will only happen if Republicans manage to rig the electoral system through gerrymandered state legislatures being allowed to overturn their election results in the Electoral College. I think that is the only realistic path to victory we got here for the Republicans in 2024. But even as soon as next year, Stewart is going to be less relevant, and really, Stewart was only a grunt infantryman in the airborne, never deployed, never saw combat, spent most of his time in service in the hospital. His operations have largely been debacles if you look at them objectively from any kind of strategy or tactics or logistical viewpoint. The tactics of Bundy Ranch were a fucking disaster. Like, even Oathkeepers' own dog. Calm yourself down. She's upset because I usually walk her as soon as I get home from work. And I came back late today, so now she's just unendingly mad. He's a very spoiled baby. But as a competent leader, Stewart is just not that qualified to be a paramilitary gang leader. He's not that qualified to be a Kadyrov. Another name I'm probably mispronouncing. The loyalist Chechnyan paramilitary leader who's operating death squads behind the lines of the Russian army right now to murder dissenters and deserters. Like, he's not even qualified to be that guy. He's really doesn't have a lot of utility left unless he manages to somehow completely rebuild Oathkeepers from inside a medium security prison through the medium of his call-out interviews with the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Unless he can manage to do that and have a loyal, thousands-strong, private roving army again by the 2024 elections, go ahead and get out of here. Sorry, this is running a little bit long. And you will see me on a weekly basis now I got to figure out another streaming time because my previous regular Wednesday time slot conflicts with like local Democrat organizing meetings that I'm going to start attending regularly. So I got to figure out an alternate time slot that works for everybody. Might just be Tuesdays. All right, take care out there, librarian. Stewart is just not that useful. And he is useful as a... Yep, I will see you around. Thank you. And he's useful as a chip to look at this political prisoner who was unfairly maligned on January 6th, but his... like, the r/conservative subreddit, which is an echo chamber of insanity, was not upset at him getting sentenced yesterday. They were not sympathetic comments. The conspiracy theory subreddit, which is also a crazy echo chamber, the most sympathetic it got was accusing him of being a CIA agent the entire time who was never real and always an assumed identity to act as an agent provocateur inside the militia movement. Like, his credibility is mostly gone. He's yesterday's news to the Patriot movement. His main utility now is as a potential stepstone to prosecuting the people further up the chain of command in the January 6th sedition plot, which I believe to be Roger Stone, just because of that photo of Roger Stone's signal contacts. Unless he was in touch with Michael Flynn much more often. So I think, and just the plain fact is that if a future conservative strongman gets into power, Stewart will be more of a problem for them on the outside. Oh, is Roger Stone lives 5 miles from you? I'm so sorry. Have you seen the Nixon tattoo? Can you see him sunbathing his Nixon tattoo from, I don't know, some sort of long-range scope? And a very innocuous one. I'm sorry to hear that. I'd love to see that in person someday. Hopefully preserved in a museum. Inside a frame. Oh, he goes to a restaurant that you go to. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's tragic news. I feel for you so deeply. I wouldn't want to be within aura distance of him. Not like at any range where I could possibly receive telepathic signals, even subconsciously. I wouldn't want to deal with it. Yeah, so that's it, folks. That's my 2 cents on whether Stewart's going to get pardoned. The answer is no, because he put himself in a position where he's no longer useful. He's potentially a problem because he'll keep trying to seek power once he's outside, because he has to be some kind of important martyr figure in American history. He potentially knows too much, and he's locked himself into a position where his only move is to remain undyingly loyal until a strong man that does not need him is in power, who will hopefully pity pardon him for political capital that a strong man aiming to become a dictator probably will not need. It'll be so easy to just let pardoning Stewart Rhodes fall to the back of the agenda when you're busy rigging the Electoral College for all time, getting rid of interracial marriage, and gerrymandering everything. On the continuing subject of Stewart Rhodes, though, I would like to take a look at Northwest Liberty News with Jim White. Jim White, who in times past did a lot of editing for Oathkeepers video. He built the original website for Stewart's side project business, Snakebite Tactical. Excuse me. Which was Stewart's side project business with a couple of other Oathkeepers guys to build effectively ghillie suits that could defeat thermal imaging cameras, with the specific utility of being able to hide from drones, because it was a multi-layered thing that allowed your body heat to seep out, but in a way that your silhouette was broken up and you were not recognizable as a human. So it was a suit that would hide you from Fleur. Hey, no problem. Go take your dog for a walk. I'm gonna walk my dog as soon as I'm done with this, so it would be hypocritical. I'm gonna wrap this up pretty quick. I'm already over time. Gonna hit the high notes here. So Snakebite Tactical was Stewart's side project business that ultimately broke up on bad terms because working with Stewart is nearly impossible. Oh, thank you for the follow, Intense Wiggling. Love your username. But yeah, that was a really fun side project. Buy our ghillie suit that will hide you from predator drones was basically the entire tagline. And James or Jim White here built the website for that and was involved in editing a lot of Oathkeepers videos, and is now running this unbelievably shitty website. As you can see, the banner for the website is just this picture, but with other website elements cutting it off, and with a rolling ticker tape of complete nonsense. But this website had interviews with Stewart from prison, interviewed him immediately before his arrest. This was the last outlet to interview Stewart before his arrest. This guy moved to Montana just because all of the Oathkeepers High Command was moving to Montana at the same time for the American Redoubt Project, and now he's just a festering sore in Kalispell, down there with Chuck Baldwin and their ilk at Liberty Fellowship. Got into an argument with me about Stewart on Twitter, and was really all in on Stewart as a political prisoner. And looking at their website, I mean, it looks like maybe they just haven't gotten it together yet. I don't know. We'll check the live broadcast out in a second here. But I'm not seeing much coverage of Stewart's sentencing. It looks like they've looks like they've just completely abandoned Stewart altogether, which I find hilarious. I'm not going to forget about Jim White, though. I'm going to make a regular feature out of harassing him in a very legalistic term. Nothing in a very much nothing that can get me sued sort of way. Fun harassment. Do not buy the energy drink that promises to clean the plastic out of your blood. If you go to bloodboost.net, it tries to acquire your IP address and location, and it's some weird supplement company that ultimately dates back to James White. There's no fucking telling what's in that shit. It's not going to clean your blood, though. Covering what seems to be some kind of personal feud with Whitefish Credit Union, which is a credit union that I have had nothing but good experiences with. Support your local credit unions. One nice interview with a boxer. Interviewing with the biggest fuckheads on earth, the Freedom Caucus, about their persecution of Representative Zoe Zephyr. And just ridiculous false equivalencies. So we will click over to the live broadcast and see if they're talking about Stewart at all. Oh, I didn't read I misread the thing. So that's 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. No, we're not going to get anything. So we're just going to look for Stewart Rhodes real quick to see if they have any current commentary. But I think Stewart might have been just abandoned in place by the people that he paid to move to Montana in the first place. If the website loads. Oh, man. Last result 8 months ago. A video that I covered on a previous live stream. Yeah, no. They're leaving him. They're leaving his ass dead in the water. So we don't have enough time today for a reaction to the fascistic spectacle that I'm told Trump getting on stage with the January 6th political prisoner choir is. But I will have some time for a little bit of Oathkeepers Targeted Red, a book by a guy that I still refer to as Elias alias previous Oathkeepers editor-in-chief and board member. Somebody who split up with Stewart on incredibly bad terms for attempting to, with some others, basically take control of Oathkeepers, and I'm just going to call it executing a coup, because they discovered that Stewart, through his mismanagement, had allowed an IT guy to embezzle over $200,000 from Oathkeepers, and then had covered it up to conceal his incompetence, and also because the ridiculously complicated, insecure financial setup that enabled the theft of over $200,000 from Oathkeepers by a random IT guy who was operating under a pseudonym the entire time. That entire situation existed, I believe, to cover up Stewart's own financial misdeeds. So Stewart got very upset over this attempt by Elias and others to, or Franklin Shook. I don't know if I ever knew this man's real name. I consider myself friends with him as Elias alias. That's just how I've always known him. The entire time I've been in Montana. Oathkeepers, the Mental Militia, Elias alias. Gonna look at the forward here. So first off, this is a semi-fictionalized book, as in the forward, I'm sorry, it is 7 o'clock. That's my fire department's radio going off. Give me a moment. I have to stand up and work out my stiff legs anyway. And we are back in. Sorry, that's the 7 o'clock pager test for my fire department. Put this back on. Let's just linger on Stewart being dressing like a villain in a really low budget, like fat era Steven Seagal movie. Freaking discount Goldeneye over here. So this is a semi-fictionalized narrative, as the forward here reads. Get ready for a new sort of ride through a writing style that is a unique blend of fact and fiction, parapsychology and metaphysics, inspection of overt authoritarianism and clandestine mind control. Enjoy the storyline as Franklin Shook takes readers into the mysterious realm of the 21st century schizoid statecraft via his pseudonym Elias Alias. With the current political climate as it is, this book uses the poetic overview, featuring the figurative language of a poetic hermit, intermixed with government documents and tidbits of hidden history, during an 11-day excursion through a scenario of dueling interviews between a Washington washboard news journalist, Tammy, and a former founding member of the Oathkeepers board of directors, Elias Alias. So, this is to provide necessary context. On the back of the jacket, Tammy is referenced, and we have no idea who the hell that is. Tammy is like the audience surrogate who's getting handheld through Militia World on a guided tour by Elias Alias. And Elias is just Elias, because I can fucking guarantee you that how Elias writes himself in this book is literally just how he is. Like, he goes by Elias Alias in day-to-day life. That's how all his friends know him, as far as I know. It's just if Franklin Shook might be his legal name, but Elias is Elias. This is just him. Also, that was all one sentence, and it changed font size in the middle, and it felt like hitting a pothole with my brain. Like, changed font size and spacing, like, for one line. The imaginary setting for their discussions features various locations around western Montana and a joining of minds as day by day the two diversely rooted individuals discuss the organization known as Oathkeepers in relation to modern government's efforts to defame and destroy the Oathkeepers. From the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Department of Justice, and other departments, agencies, and federal offices, and especially with the January 6th committee, every type of propaganda is used to promote the federal government's preferred narrative. Turn the volume down a little bit. In a collective consciousness of the American public's perception. A featured focus in that preferred narrative is to demonize the Oathkeepers organization, which was founded to educate everyone about the oath required by our Constitution. After the January 6, 2020 incident at the nation's capital, the Oathkeepers organization has been specifically and arduously assaulted by the media and by the January 6 Select Committee. Having been interviewed by numerous mainstream media in the months following that January 6, 2020 Capitol visitation by the people. Oh no. Franklin Shook takes issue with the government's narrative and has decided to use this book as a statement in print that refutes and rebuts the government's accusations. To do that, he has created a fiction storyline in which facts are exposed by tearing down the wall of lies spread about Oathkeepers in the mainstream media. He examines questions that everyone should want to know. Is the Oathkeepers organization a militia, as the government now claims? Could the 10 orders which Oathkeepers vowed to refuse truly be possible in today's federal frenzy of surveillance state intrusion? Are Oathkeepers racists? Are Oathkeepers radicalized extremists? There's a comma in there. Is the Oathkeepers organization really a domestic enemy and a threat to law enforcement, as the FBI has claimed? And giving the reader an insight based on his 6 years as a founding member of their board of directors, 2009 to 2015, as an editor for their national website for Oathkeepers' first 7 years, 2009 to 2016, Franklin includes the human side of life as it relates and does not relate to federally empowered statecraft tactics and propaganda. In this book, an older and wiser Elias Alias is targeted by a Washington, D.C. journalist, Miss Tammy, who hopes to score an insider scoop for her newspaper. She flies to Montana and spends the next 11 days having an in-depth discussion on a wide range of topics relevant to Oathkeepers, the mental militia, and Elias Alias. So, I am imagining the answer to all of those questions posed in the foreword there is a bunch of resounding no's. From my perspective, that's a yes to all. The answer to all those questions is yes. Oathkeepers is a militia. They are extremist. That shit was chock full of racists. Like, there was just... I was surrounded by... My mouth is getting dry. I start to lisp. Have I talked too long? I was surrounded by explicit and implicit white supremacy my entire childhood, and I believed in a frankly delusional, mythologized American belief system in order to ignore that. It is a defining feature of a racist American conservatives that they don't really want to admit their racism even to themselves, and it is really easy to pretend that your movement doesn't have a racism problem, and it's all false accusations from without. Active members of Stormfront, the neo-Nazi forum, made it into Stewart's inner circle and had paid positions at the national level of Oathkeepers while they were posting on Stormfront about how they were infiltrating Oathkeepers to convert it from the inside. But I'm not going to go off on a tangent about that. We are going to go to On a Split Rail Fence with Doc, the back cover. I'm very easily confused by cameras. I'm like a cat. And mirror images. This book reads somewhat like a novel, but the storyline clothes reality in Franklin's unique way. Oh, excuse me. Of revealing modern man's plight in a world gone mad. Does Tammy get her story? Does Elias Alias prove Oathkeepers' innocence? What is the future for Oathkeepers as an organization? None. Is our constitutional republic in trouble? Is Montana really heaven on earth? To answer such questions, Elias Alias takes Tammy on peak-skimming forays outside the box of our presented history on a mental mission covering the American Revolution's long stride hike through 2.5 centuries of change, advancement, and development, right into the insanity of consolidated, centralized government largesse as symbolized by the COVID lockdowns, government mind control, science. Science has like 3 spaces on either side of it. I'm assuming there were supposed to be quotation marks there. Pax Americanas, more spaces, CIA, pathology, cultural Marxism's long march through the institutions. Cultural Marxism is a rebranding of cultural Bolshevism. Cultural Marxism is about the Jews. Lots of people who repeat talking points about cultural Marxism don't know that. I'm giving Elias benefit of the doubt. I really believe he's not a Nazi. He's not willingly spreading anti-Semitic talking points. Cultural Marxism means cultural Bolshevism. Cultural Bolshevism was a Nazi party slogan. It was spread into American politics by a completely shithouse rat crazy fucking lunatic named William S. Lind, who made his career out of hanging out with Operation Paperclip transportees who were actual Nazis. And he introduced that into modern political parlance as cultural Marxism to obfuscate its origins. Cultural Marxism just means the Jews. That's what it means. We gotta stop repeating that. We need to call that out for what it is. Long march through the institutions, which is a myth. The Frankfurt School is not the Illuminati. An economic uncertainty producing cashless transhumanist society as a dangerous mood of biologically altered RNA insanity cheers for World War III. from the beginning of this paragraph, from to answer such questions to World War III, here, that is one sentence. Isn't unity the last word in community, and isn't community about all we've got left? So, I will be reading this, I will be reviewing it from my Substack, and I might even just have Elias on to talk about what he thinks happened with January 6th and my view of it. My view being very different from his, obviously. But now, before we go, as our finisher, we're going to do something fun. We are going to go over my adventure in trying to put snow tires away. So we still have a storage unit full of Stewart shit. That was his share of all the stuff. We boxed up his entire side of the house, his entire side of the bedroom, all of his piles of survival gear when the the filing for divorce and separation first happened. We gave him all his stuff. We put it in a storage unit, and he never came to get it. We paid for that storage unit for years, waiting for him to come and get all of his shit. And he abandoned it, and now he's not going to be coming back to get it for another 18 years. He is not coming back to get that as an old-ass man. So, I decided to... I've taken some books out of there, like martial arts equipment. Over the summer, I'm going to be training with my mom in Filipino-style stick fighting because she trained as much in martial arts as Stewart did. She just wasn't in front of cameras to brag about it. Like, my mom trained with the Lagusa family, if you know who they are. So I went in there on a mission to clear space to put snow tires away for summer storage. Like, get some use out of the place. Moved a pile of stuff. Knocked over a pile of boxes of bags. Got hit in the legs with mini Ziploc bags of receipts from Oathkeepers trips that were never turned into the treasurer. And then underneath it was this sneaky satchel brand bag. What is inside the sneaky satchel? Let's find out. It's fully loaded PMags. So this is fully loaded magazines of 5.56. Dirty as fuck. Covered in nastiness. The ammunition has brass discoloration. We have a mix in here. I scraped my thumb at work today. That really hurt. Did that without thought. We have a mix in here. I keep forgetting where I have pointed the camera. I really don't understand mirror images. Of hollow point ammunition. I mean, it's not really playing with guns if you don't hurt your thumbs at some point. It's supposed to hurt. And green tip armor piercing ammunition. Like, that is a fucked up cartridge. Because these have been sitting in a not climate controlled storage unit, you store it box for years. So, and who knows how long they were rolling around in the back of a car before then. This is just a tragic waste of perfectly good ammunition. Like, I just hate seeing stuff go to waste. And then in here we have a camera cleaning lens pen. Doesn't seem to have made it any worse. So, funny story. Stewart took this exact satchel with a concealed pistol in it when he came to stay with me for a little bit. One time when I went to a Boy Scout camp on Melita Island. So he, against the rules, took in a concealed pistol in case there was a mass shooting and carried it around the entire time in secret. Also here, I keep doing that. Pistol ammunition. 3 magazines for... This actually fits my pistol. This all fit Glock 23 with 40 Smith & Wesson. Hollow point pistol rounds. So that's 2 of these with the brass cartridge, and then 1 steel case with a different type of ammunition. I'm not sure what that is. Then also, in the same pile that shook out onto my feet, we have an original Oathkeepers t-shirt. Emblazoned with the 3% symbol, and established April 19th, Lexington Green. And here on the flag decal sleeve, don't know how well that shows up, this was a shirt that was printed with the CPT program, the Community Preparedness Team, originally the much more grandiose Civilization Preservation Team project, which is effectively an effort to establish the seeds of a guerrilla resistance cellular network throughout the United States, under the guise of local security and community preparedness, and also potentially a paramilitary movement that could be activated as the militant wing of a new state arising if the America collapsed and the New World Order didn't come in to take over. Also, we have Fiat Empire, unopened in the plastic, which may make it a collector's edition. Probably not. Why the Federal Reserve violates the U.S. Constitution, starring a bunch of people I don't know. From Cornerstone Matrix Productions and moviepubs.net. Oh, thank you for the follow, Margie. Discover why experts agree the Fed is a banking cartel that benefits mainly bankers, their clients in need of easy money, bailouts, and a Congress that would rather go deeper into debt than raise taxes. I say this because this paragraph is really interesting. If this is not a collector's item in its plastic seal, we will watch this on a future live stream. Long-term studies indicate the Federal Reserve encourages war, destabilizes the economy by boom and bust cycles. A feature of Austrian economics, which all these fuckers believe in like it's a religion. The boom and bust cycle destabilizes the economy. Oh, good to see you too. Thank you. Generates inflation, a hidden tax. Yes. And unjust enrichment and is the supreme instrument of unjust enrichment for select insiders. Bad news, it's not the Federal Reserve that's doing that. It's America's unfettered capitalism. Continuing on, let's see. A Cold Stone receipt. That might just be mine that I accidentally left in the same pile. I don't know. 3% IR patches. These will reflect infrared and be extra visible on night vision, so you can keep track of your guys in the dark if you are using night vision opticals. And it is almost the same as the American flag IR patch issued to the U.S. military, except we have the original 13 colonies flag centered around the 3% symbol. So very technically, if you're out in the middle of the night in a gunfight with the National Guard and you're wearing one of these, you're not committing a war crime, but you could be mistaken for wearing U.S. military insignia at a distance. So this is kind of towing the line there, but mostly it's just merchandise. Moving on, mystery phone numbers for people I don't know on a random notepad. Included with that, an address in Henderson, Nevada, and phone numbers for Eamon Bundy and Ryan Bundy of Bundy Ranch fame. This landed on my foot while I was trying to put tires away. So we've looked through all that shit in that storage unit before. Obviously, we have not scratched the surface. And then, last but not least, someone I entirely forgot about having a weird conversation at an Oathkeepers event with when I was a teenager. A bookmark flyer for Oathkeepers supporter Shoshana Evers, author extraordinaire. Of ShoshanaEvers.com. Author of such titles, a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of such titles as Enslaved, Ensnared, Enraptured, The Pulse, The Escape, The Thrust, Beauty and the Beast, The Man Who Holds the Whip, and How to Write Hot Sex, tips from multi-published erotic romance authors. Edited by Shoshana Evers. Shesh Dog. On the reverse, Sexily Evers After. Amazing. Fast-paced, intense, and sexual. Every naughty fantasy come to life for the reader. Whipped cream reviews. I should hope so, from Alpha Male Erotica. Grab yourself a glass of iced water and a fan before you sit down and indulge. Happily Ever After reviews. The most sensuous, delightful, and sizzling books I have read in a long time. Night Owl reviews. And then Shoshana Evers on Facebook and Twitter. I remember this woman. She told me I was not allowed to read the free copy of one of her books that she handed out to Oathkeepers people at this weirdo event somewhere in Montana because I was a teenager. I was underage. So, points for sticking to your principles. I guess I would love to look at some of these books and see if there's like weird right-wing political messaging like hidden inside the smut. It's like supposed to be like subliminal right-wing programming. And oh boy, I have a community event that I have to go to tonight, and it starts in 6 minutes. Whoops. All right, inauspicious end to the live stream. Thank you all very much. We will investigate all these leads, all of these plot hooks that I opened up today with the mysteries of the storage unit and the mind of Elias Alias. And we will get to that next time, because I'm going to be doing these weekly for a while now. You will not be rid of me for some time. And look forward to seeing this uploaded to YouTube. I'm going to start doing that again. I'm going to inflict myself on all the platforms. All right, thank you, and good night. Happily Evers After.